the thing about excuses, anyone listening, is they're actually real. They feel very real in the
Sure.
moment. And so we allow the excuses to get in front of our goals and our dreams and our desires.
Yes. Welcome to Truth with Tara. I'm Tara Simon, and today I have Lisa Bilyeu on the show. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
What up, Tara? Lovely to meet you. And just for people to know, she gave me permission to say in my accent, so I'm allowed to call you Tara.
Yes, I love it. You're perfectly permissioned. So guys, for those of you who are living under a rock and don't know, Lisa is an entrepreneur. She's a best-selling author, public speaker, YouTube host, and producer with 500 million with a B views to her name. She also co-founded the billion-dollar brand Quest Nutrition. She launched the modern media studio Impact Theory, which I'm a huge fan of, built a massive global audience, and teaches others how to do the same, most importantly. Her book, Radical Confidence, is out now, and you can get that in the description box below. Lisa, I feel like that doesn't even do justice as a summarization of everything that you are and everything that you do, but I hope I did you somewhat of a good justice.
That was amazing. You did wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Lisa, I asked you on the show today because on the surface, we're on totally different ends of the spectrum industry-wise, but at the core of what you and I do, it's actually the same. And I'm gonna say to you something that you may not know. One of my hallmark quotes is that singing is 90% mental and 10% talent. And one of the things that kept echoing as I was reading your book was this one thing that you said in your book, which is radical confidence is accepting yourself the way you are, and at the same time, being brave enough to believe that you can change. And I think for those watching, there's this mystique, this veil, this like idolization of someone that's extraordinary, and it makes them feel like they're less than, like they cannot, like they never will. I knew when I read your book that you were a woman of impact, so says your series, right? But also you're a woman of extreme mindset power. And when you sing, when you learn to sing, or when someone's trying to overcome even the question of should I or could I, it's so a battle in the mind. And so today, I want listeners to hear your story of how you overcame that mean girl in your head, how you overcame, as you call it, the purgatory of the mundane, and how we can show our audience members, most of which of mine want to learn how to do something they think is kind of impossible for them to do, how you can, and empower them to take that first step. So I thought I might start with one of my favorite parts in your book. I affectionately now call it the Beverly Hills bathroom debacle in chapter 10.
That's where we're starting, huh, homie? I love it. Let's go.
I figured you'd be a good
My
sport.
type of girl.
Let's just go straight for the jugular, you know?
Let's do it.
So
the first question is the most embarrassing moment of my entire life in 44 years, and you open with it. Respect.
You go big or you go home, homie, you know?
Yeah,
So please, we're gonna kind of bounce around your life a little bit, but I do want to start there because I do feel that it will let everyone know just how serious you are about being vulnerable and being real and totally authentic, so that there's this kind of like relationship equity built, because you say some big things in your book and you prop your life up on some big core values, but I really feel like we need to know your humanity first. So please tell us about the Beverly Hills bathroom debacle.
Oh God. All right. I love this. So I just want to touch on one thing that you said for people who you said, you know, your community, your audience are very much into singing and music.
Yeah.
And I actually want to say that as an artist, so I draw in my spare time. And so I know the fear of a fresh page, like the fear of a blank page, the amount of artists that worry about picking up that pencil or the paintbrush again because maybe they've done it once and they've told themselves that it was luck or something like that. So every time you start fresh, it always feels like you're starting over again. And so all those doubts and fears come seeping in. So as an artist, I completely get it. And so that's where actually I love that you started there, because talk about fear. How do we overcome the fear? How do we overcome failure? How do we overcome falling on our face? And still getting back up? Because I'm sure whether you're an artist or a singer, a musician, no matter what you do, you all face the same struggles, right? We all face the fear of failure, the possibility of being so bad at something that we're going to be mocked or ridiculed, or like the embarrassment and shame. So all of that is very real. And so you can package it whichever way you like. And so I love that you started there. And then in this story, you'll hear that yes, my life is about business and about showing up on camera and building businesses, but it all stems from that fundamental emotions that we go through that we're not good enough.
That's so powerful.
And so with the story that you're talking about, we had already built, Quest was already known as $1 billion company. We already had the accolades. I'd already got all the pats on the back of, oh my God, how amazing. And so you do start to buy into it. And so when you talk about validation, where do you get your validation from? If you get your validation from having a great voice or having been able to, be unique and start playing an instrument at the age of 2, like we get validation from somewhere. And so for me, I was bullied and teased as a teenager for my looks and just the fact that I loved art. No one I knew loved art. And so no one understood me. And so when you fight through that and you finally feel like you're being validated by the people, you actually feel seen. That is actually when it's the most dangerous, because something like the story I'm about to tell you, where when you fall to your knees, how do you self-soothe? How do you make sure that you get back up and you do not let your ego get in the way? And so this story is really encompassing how you get back up. So I just wanted to orient people of why this story is so important for anyone, no matter where you are to hear.
Buckle up, guys.
So yeah, we buckle up. So I've got all the accolades.
Yeah.
I felt badly about myself. I had insecurities. I struggled a lot. And so in that struggle, we built Quest.
Yeah.
So now people see you as being talented. People see you as being amazing. People see you as being accomplished. Someone that never fails, has always got their stuff together. I have a lot of health issues, a lot of gut issues. So we're building Quest. It's coming so quickly. I'm pouring myself into it and I neglect myself. So just to give people context. So in neglecting my self-care, my health went really poorly because I was showing up for everyone else except for myself. So now I've got really bad gut issues, really bad, to the point where I can barely eat out. I can barely eat anything. And it's our anniversary. And I've been struggling for years. So eventually I was like, babe, let's just go to a restaurant. We'll call them. We'll make sure that, they've got all the right ingredients and that I can actually stomach it. So we do all the prep work. We go to the most beautiful hotel, Beverly Wilshire. If anyone's seen Pretty Woman, you know the hotel I'm talking about.
The dream.
So you can imagine, it's our anniversary. We've been crushing it. We've been working so hard that eventually it's anniversary. So we've got a date night. So this was a big deal to us. So we booked Beverly Wilshire. It's cut. It's like one of the most prestigious, beautiful restaurants in Los Angeles. And so we go there. My husband calls up. We speak to the chef. I mean, it was like intense. I'm really building this up so you can see how important it was to us. Yeah. And so we go to the restaurant and we sit down and I'm just so happy, right? I fought my way to getting to the top of the protein bar ladder. We have busted our ass, put our relationship second. We put our health second. I put my health last. And so we're at this restaurant, finally having this one night. And my stomach starts to go and it starts to cramp up. And so I'm paying attention to it and it's cramping up more and more. And I'm like, it's clearly not happy. I think I need to use the restroom. Yeah. Now, who knows why? But for some reason, in beautiful hotels, at the restaurants, they don't have their own restrooms. They actually have like the hotel restrooms. And so I get up and I'm like, excuse me, where's your restroom? They're like, oh, we don't have one. You have to go to the front of the hotel and use the hotel lobby restroom.
Like McDonald's has a restroom.
I know, right? Starbucks has a restroom.
Wow.
So here I am feeling really good about myself. I'm at the top of the ladder. I got my sexy outfit on. I got my knee-high boots on. I got shorts on. I got a tank top. I'm feeling hot. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, restroom's not here. Let me walk. So I start walking to the restroom. My stomach starts to go. Let me walk a little faster because it's starting to get dangerous. Oh, wow, it's really starting to get dangerous. Lisa, you need to run to the restroom. So here I am running to the restroom in Beverly Wilshire Hotel because my stomach is giving me cramps and it ain't it's not pee, just to give everyone context. Right. And unfortunately, I don't.
Oh my gosh, no, Lisa.
And let's just make it even worse because it really was even worse. I didn't even have my cell phone on me to call my husband. So here I am, guys. This is like, what, 8 years ago, 6 years ago? So I'm an adult. I'm 44 now. So to give people context, that you feel like you're on the top of your game and something like that happens. Right. And it was emotionally destroying. It doesn't matter how many accolades, how many successes you've had in your life. When you don't feel good about yourself, when you feel like you have been metaphorically punched in the face over and over and over again, and your ego literally cannot stand, I felt helpless. I felt useless. I felt embarrassed. I felt shame. I felt failure. I felt fill in the blank.
Wow.
And so in that moment, I was devastated. Now, it's Tony Robbins, I believe, that said, how do you make the worst moment your best moment ever? And so in that moment, I just reminded myself, I didn't feel it, but I just reminded myself, Lisa, this one moment doesn't dictate who you are.
Good. Yeah.
And what does dictate who you are is how you handle it.
That's right.
And so while my stomach and the incident that happened wasn't my fault, how I show up and handle it is.
Yeah.
And so I think of every moment becomes a future memory. So in the future, how do I want to remember this moment when I have actually fallen to my knees? And so I said, okay, this is where I'm able to show myself what I'm made of. Yes, you feel terrible. And yes, you feel embarrassed and shamed. But is that where the story ends?
Right.
Like, do you write the end after that happens?
No, absolutely
not. Or
not.
do you make that your first chapter?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So in real time, I repeated to myself, Lisa, this doesn't dictate who you are. Also, how are you going to show up? Because this will be a future memory. And do you look back on this as shame and embarrassment? Now, I just understand mindset. I understand myself enough to know that I had two choices in that moment. One, swear to never tell a living soul, make my husband promise, and literally sweep that memory under the rug and never let it see the light of day.
Yeah. Which
that is an option that so many of us do.
Yes, definitely. It would be secretly called the situation.
Yes. I'm going to steal that one. It would be called the situation. And so in those moments, I just know that. And I know in that, if I don't address it now, just like anything, the longer you leave it, the harder it is to address.
Yeah.
So I said, Lisa, you got a choice. You can pretend this never happened, which is very valid. You don't owe anyone anything. But what is that going to look like if you sweep it under the rug? What's it going to look like in a year, in 2 years? I've taught myself that burying shame is okay. I've taught myself that it's okay to be embarrassed by things. And the truth is that mindset doesn't serve what I'm trying to do in life. I've got to get over shame. I've got to get over embarrassment if I want to really achieve the goals that I have set for myself. And so in that moment, I just said, okay. You can't change it, but you can change what you say and what you do.
Yes.
I just try and clean up as quickly as possible. And I run to the table that my husband's sitting up. And I was like, get your phone. We're leaving right now. And I just leave. And he knows that that's not like me. So he's like, babe, what's up? I was like, okay, I'm going to tell you, but we've got to get through it. And I'm in tears. And so I'm like sobbing, telling him the story. And then as we're getting in the car, I said, but now I have a choice. And so, babe, what we're going to do is we're going to go home. I'm going to shower, of course. We're going to put on some really comfy pajamas and we're going to put on the most romantic movie and we're just going to sit in bed and cuddle. And that ended up becoming the anniversary I remember for the good reason. Because here's what I learned. My husband supported me. When you talk about relationships and you talk about community, how do people show up when things are hard, not when they're good? And so in that moment, how did my husband show up? Amazing. He supported me. He didn't give me any shame or embarrassment or, feed into it. If anything, he was like, it doesn't matter. Who cares? It's not a big deal. So there were so many things that I proved to myself in that. So number one, that my relationship with my husband really was solid and he wasn't going to judge me over one thing. Number two, that I damn well can get up when things get hard. And number three, I can look at it right in the face and admit it and use that as empowerment, not something that actually tears me down.
Absolutely.
And so those lessons I take with me everywhere. And as I'm writing the book, I'm come to that moment where I said, all right, Lisa, you said when you were in the car in tears, you made a promise that you were going to use this story for good. Because that was how I got over it. I was like, you have to make a promise that one day this story is going to actually help people. I don't know how, because imagine I'm still sitting there in tears. I'm like, I have no idea how. I have no idea how I'm going to overcome this. But right now, I will make a promise to myself. And the promise is one day I will tell this story out loud and it will be used for good. And so here I am writing my book and I'm like, all right, I made a promise to myself. That promise got me through the most heartbreaking moment of my life. And now it's my time to show up for that person that got me through that moment. And so that is why I made sure that I told the story, because it isn't about how people perceive you. It is about how you feel about yourself when you are by yourself, period.
Because there is so much power on the other side of silence, isn't there? There's no shame.
1,000%.
So guys, those of you who have, tried to sing in front of someone and you got made fun of, or you submitted something or auditioned and you got turned down, or you cracked in front of an audience in a big performance. This is someone right now that you're listening to, Lisa, that shows up so big and she's so real. She can say the most embarrassing moment of her life, not just even on a podcast, but in a book that's there for eternity. So as we get into the more meat and potatoes of this interview, I just want you to know that like Lisa is the real deal, and you just heard her prove it. Lisa, thank you so much for being so transparent in that story. I'm just so inspired by how you reframe, like intentionally, you pre-decide in that moment, like in real time, not asynchronistically. I'm going to use this for good. And then you didn't just say it, but you followed through, and here we are talking about it. And it honestly is one of my favorite moments in your entire book. And I read the whole thing and even skimmed over it a second time after, because there's such good stuff in there. So thank you for that.
Of course. And I just one more note. What's crazy is, you know how many women have come up to me since and whispered in my ear, and they have said, I've never told a soul.
Wow.
But they tell me why? Because they find comfort in the vulnerability and comfort in knowing that someone isn't going to judge them for it.
That's so good.
But they still don't tell their partners. They still don't tell it out loud. And so if anything, like giving permission for other people to share their most embarrassing stories allows hopefully then for you to get over it, to your point of like, if your voice cracks and you're on stage, how do you handle it? You got a choice. You can get back on stage and, get another chance after you've practiced, or you never get on stage again.
That's right.
The choice is yours.
Yes.
What future do you want? And move towards the future and the goal that you've actually set, even when it's hard.
Yes.
Especially
when it's hard. Exactly. So speaking of future, when you were talking in the book about your upbringing, you're Greek, very Greek, like My Big Fat Greek Wedding Greek, which by the way, I love the movie. So I fully related. I was like, oh, I totally know how she grew up by saying that. Like, I totally get that if you make that comparison. So, I mean, spray some Windex on it, lamb, all of the things, right? And you yet had these dreams instead of like being a wife and a mom, which there's nothing wrong with. You had these dreams of being a filmmaker, right? Which led you to LA. And then you met your now husband, but there was like some scandal in how you guys first met. And I'd love for you to actually talk about that too, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, that's so funny. So now I don't think it would ever happen, but you're talking about, 23 years ago, just to orient people. So the year was 2000. Okay. And I persuade my dad to let me come to America just to give me a chance to work, go to film school just for 8 weeks, because I had got a film degree, but I didn't feel like I got enough experience. And so when you're anyone that is from a very traditional upbringing, I had to persuade my dad, because my dad carries the keys to the kingdom. And so if I wanted to do anything, I had to ask for his permission. And so he paid for me to come to America for 8 weeks. And I walk in, and the first person I see is this really hot American teacher. And so for like 4 weeks, I'm just like eyeing this dude up. I'm like, he's really hot. And by the last 4 weeks, we went on our first date. So of course the scandal is I dated my teacher. Right. Now it was a film school for adults, and he's only 4 years older than me, but still he was still my teacher.
Yes.
The thing that was amazing about that, I think, is neither of us had high expectations. And that was really what kind of set us up well. And going back to making sure it really resonates with your audience, when you have a high expectation of something and you don't meet it, you get disappointed, you feel maybe it's about you, and so you can get the wind knocked out of you, whether that's a relationship or just a skill set that you're trying to develop. Right. And so for me and my husband, we didn't put any pressure on each other, because we both thought it was going to be a hot summer fling. And so for me, I'm like, this is great. He's a very good looking American guy. And so when I'm 90 and I'm back in England, I'm going to tell my grandkids about the one time I had this hot fling with the American dude in America. So that was in my head how I was just going to show up as me, because there was no future baked into it. And the same for him. He just got out of a relationship where the girl had been a little clingy. So for him, he's like, this is perfect. She's on a visa. She legally has to leave the country with, in like a month. So even if she gets clingy, then, she has to still legally leave. So we just went on those dates, on our first dates, of just like saying who we really were. And there was no pretense. And when you are in front of someone with no pretense and they accept you for who you are, it really, for me at least, helped me build my confidence and really my journey into my confidence. And I had to pivot over time to make sure that my confidence didn't come from other people,
Right.
that it actually came from myself. But that took time. But that was really the scandal, if you call it, and for the first meeting and the first dates with me and Tom.
So cute. And I say scandal tongue in cheek, but student dating teacher is a fun little quip, And I think the fantasy of pretty much every student that ever was in school, basically. So kudos to you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, right. So moving on though, in your early-ish years of marriage, Tom did something really radical. He bet your house as collateral for Quest. I'd love to hear about what went on in your head when he came home to say, hey, like, this business is going to be different. And by the way, we're homeless if it doesn't work.
Yeah. So we had been chasing money because the goal was to make movies.
Right.
And because we'd had experiences in movies where they were just horrible, what you hear about Hollywood, sadly, is a lot of it is very true. And so there was a lot of people that would disrespect you. I'd been on sets a couple of times. I'd been yelled at. An actor threw a matchbox at me. I mean, like, there are bad stories about being on set and just in Hollywood. So we turned around and my husband had the idea of whoever controls the resources controls the art.
It's true.
So if you're able to control the finance, then you can do whatever you want because no one's here to tell you what to do. And I was like, that sounds like a great plan, babe. All right, so how much should it really cost to make enough money, to make enough movies? We predicted around 12 months.
Yeah.
So that was a bad strategy. Obviously, it took a lot longer than that. But the goal is that he was going to go out and he was going to work traditional business. And I was going to stay at home for a year and I was going to take care of everything else. And so anyone that's relating to you make sacrifices for other people, I made the sacrifice and I said, cool, this is just for 12 months. Now, what ends up happening to so many of us is we do it for the greater good of the people around us. And so that 12 months turns into 8 years. And that is what I call, what you mentioned at the beginning, that was my purgatory of the mundane. My life was just mundane enough. It didn't hit rock bottom. And so I think so many of us actually live way more in purgatory of the mundane than we do at rock bottom. Because rock bottom is going to jolt you into action.
Yes.
Purgatory of the mundane is just boring enough that you don't complain. And so when someone asks you, how's life? You just say, it's fine. It's all right. So that's where I was. So after 8 years of that, I just had enough. I said, this isn't what I signed up for in life. I want my life to be predicated on happiness and joy, not based on chasing something that is an ever-moving goalpost. And so what we did is I said to my husband, I need you to quit what you're doing. Like, just follow your heart. What do you actually love? Because I need you to be happy now, because I was miserable and he was miserable. And so that is where he came home and he said, all right, me and my business partners, we're all miserable. We've decided that actually we want to change and we want to start a new company, and it's a protein bar. And by the way, we want to use the house as collateral. Now, this is one of those moments where I had to really process what that looked like.
Yeah.
So if I lost my house, because you can never trick yourself into believing that everything's going to succeed.
Right.
So if I really was to lose my house, what would that look like? Because all the fear comes up, right? And you just need to put a voice to the fear. So the fear was, I'm not going to have a roof over my head, so I'm actually going to be homeless. All right, Lisa, actually look at that. Is that true? Do you have any friends or family that you think you cannot call to sleep on their couch? I understand you don't like to, but are you actually going to live on the streets? And the answer was no. And so obviously I know, unfortunately, some people have to assess that. And so you really need to look at that. But my answer was no. I have family and I have friends that I knew that we could have a roof over our heads. So the fear wasn't actually real. It came from coming from a Greek Orthodox family where my dad grew up in a tiny, tiny village in the mountains of Cyprus, that every day would tell me, you're lucky to have a roof over your head. You're lucky to have food on your table, on the plate. So all of these fears actually came from somebody else, not from me. So that was one identifying factor. Then the next fear was, I don't want to starve to death. All right, Lisa, is that actually going to happen? The answer was no. So once I gave voice to my fears, I said, what happens if I turn around to my husband and I say, actually, I don't want to do that. I pride myself on having this house that we've got together and I want to bring my children up. What does that look like? okay, well, I married a man that I knew was ambitious. And the truth was, I was changing the game because now I had a ring on my finger and my own house. If I was to say no, because I knew who he was, I knew who I married. I was attracted to his ambition. I find his drive and his ambition very sexy. So just because now I have a roof over my head, he doesn't change.
Oof.
And so the truth is, I could absolutely lose my house and get another house, but I don't want to ever lose my husband because I know I could never get another Tom.
Wow.
And so when he came to me in wanting to gamble the house, once I processed my fears, once I articulated that, once I then said, okay, well, what does the worst case scenario look on both sides? And the truth is that once I did that, it was an easy decision to make. And so I just turned around to my husband and I said, sink or swim, baby, we go together.
Oh, wow. And end scene. The movie was over. They kissed and wow, like what kind of man could be so lucky to have those words be uttered from his wife when he says, I basically want to bet the farm and that means the house. That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing.
Final note to that though, Tara, is it worked. Right? Like,
big time.
We do that, we take the gamble, and our tiny little house is like, you know, the size of my like garage now.
Wow.
And so, but the truth is that isn't guaranteed.
Right.
That success quest wasn't guaranteed.
Right.
So you definitely hope, you definitely call your shot, point your damn finger and say that if you're a musician right now and you're listening, freaking point your finger and say, I'm going to play Staples. I'm going to play Wembley Stadium. Like, what's the freaking thing? Yeah. Point your finger and really mean it. But now how on earth do you actually get
back it
there?
up? Yeah.
The success isn't guaranteed. So you better enjoy the path because you may never get to the Staples, but you better love getting on that small little stage at that one little venue because you enjoy the act of playing.
Yes.
And so what I'm saying right now is it wasn't guaranteed that our house wasn't going to be collateral. It wasn't guaranteed that we wouldn't lose the house. The success was amazing, but the idea of facing something, taking a gamble, betting on yourself, having a strategy, having a plan, putting your ego aside, all the things that allowed us to build the $1 billion company, we didn't naturally have the skill sets for. So we kind of built the plane as we were taking off, right? So it's like, to your point of you have to keep pushing yourself. Yes, I'm good enough now.
Yeah.
I can be way better. And so it's holding these two competing ideas that I love myself just the way I am and I'm proud of how far I've come. And Lisa, you better get back up because there's still so much more you've got to do. And it's been able to hold those two competing ideas that has allowed us to tackle something in my marriage and my business as risking a house, betting the farm, and then it being fortunate enough to have succeeded.
Yeah.
But either way, you better believe my husband and me and our relationship would be just as strong through failures and successes.
It's my favorite part about you is your loyalty, your steadfastness, and your devotion to Tom. It says everything about who you are in that moment, what you said to him. And I think people who are listening to this may be like putting you on this pedestal for that and kind of idolizing that statement of, oh my gosh, like what an amazing woman. I could never say that, right? And it goes back to that whole, well, then you're literally taking yourself off the hook. I'll get into that in a second. But first, I want to jump to YouTube because also the way that you guys started YouTube was unintentional. And our stories, actually, it's very crazy. As I read through your book, I was like, we have such similar through lines. Like we both were unintentional, unhappy housewives at one point. We have both had gut issues, like specifically like this, health issues. We have both fallen into a career that we didn't intend to be in necessarily, but it's like a version of what we thought it would be. But it was a long and windy road to get there. It's so fascinating to me. And so I want to talk a little bit about your fall into YouTube and how really YouTube for you guys was an answer to a problem at Quest. So tell me about that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very mission based. I'm very mission driven because I need a North Star,
Yes.
because I can get in my own way. My own emotions can absolutely derail me. And so when we started Quest, the mission really was to help our mums. So my husband's family are morbidly obese, and I grew up with a mum that was borderline anorexic.
Oh,
And then in my adult life, she actually fluctuated into morbidly obese. And so as we're building Quest, as you're finding problems left, right, and center, your own insecurities, like the list of all the things that get in your way to build a company or build towards your goal, it just endless.
yeah.
And so as we were working towards that, it's Mother Teresa that says, not everybody will fight for the masses, but everyone will fight for the one. So who's that one person that you wake up for every single day fighting for? And for me, and my husband, it was our family. And so as we're building Quest, as we're facing our inadequacies, as I'm using my mom as that catalyst to get me to stand back up every time that I fell, Quest ends up succeeding. And so here I am, we've got the money, we've got the resources in order to help our family. And so for my mom, I was like, Mom, I'll hire you a private chef. I'll get you a personal trainer. Like, I'll buy you a gym. Like, what do you actually need in order to help you on your journey?
Right.
And she kept saying time and time again, I'm too old, I can't lose the weight. And in that moment, what we realized is that Quest was amazing for somebody who had already believed that they were good enough to pick up a Quest bar instead of a Snickers.
Okay.
They already believed they were good enough to walk into the gym and work out. But what about the people who don't really believe they're worthy or that they're good enough to take that action in the first place? And that's where my mum was. She didn't believe that she could do it.
That's the plight of so many listening to this for different things. Like, what's your thing? Is it fitness? Is it singing? Is it school? Is it whatever? But the belief that you can do it is literally the stuckness that you stay in, whether you believe it or not. That's so good. Keep going.
Exactly. Like that literally will dictate whether you show up or not. And so my mum didn't believe she could, so she never once tried. And over time, what we realized is that if you don't believe it, then you're never going to take the action.
Wow.
And so how do we actually impact people's minds? Because the mind is what will be the powering mechanism in order for you to take action. So how do I convince someone like my mum to believe that she's just good enough to take her health seriously? That's really the truth.
Yes.
And she didn't believe that she was worthy. And so we just start doing our content, and Tom does his show at Quest. And so we built originally his show at Quest Nutrition, and we start doing content, and we just put it out on YouTube because we were trying to help people around us. We were trying to help our employees. We were growing so quickly. And so we were just putting it up on YouTube and sending people internally the link, and then sending our family and other people the link. And it just started to snowball. Now, what ended up happening is that my mum retires exactly the same year that we start the show.
Okay.
And I don't realize that she's starting to listen to Tom's content. So Tom's bringing people on where we're talking about mindset, where we're talking about the power of belief. These days, it's a lot more common. But just to orient you, this was like 8 years ago. It was even using the word empowerment. So just to get people to know whereabouts we were in the timeline. So we're doing this content, we're putting it out, and my mum is watching it, not realizing that she's actually absorbing it. And she went from a woman that was morbidly obese, and she then told me about 3 or 4 months later, just so you know, I didn't tell anybody, but I've been walking.
Oh.
And she's like, I didn't want to tell anyone because I just wanted to do it for myself. Now, this is a woman that couldn't walk 10 feet.
Wow.
And she's like, I'm just walking every day. And so one day, and I didn't want to put pressure on her. So one day I call her. Now, this is a woman that didn't believe. She's 65 at the time. So anyone listening right now where they're saying the two are, she was 65 at the time.
So good.
She'd had a belief system her entire life that she wasn't worthy enough. Yep. And here she is, changing her mindset one piece of content at a time. So I now call her. We're about 6 months in. I'm trying not to pressure because the amount of times growing up, I'd heard my mum do it, the Slim Fast diet, the Atkins diet, she tried everything. Yeah. She wanted gastric bypass at one point. Like she tried everything. Okay. And so it comes to a point where 6 months later, I call her up and I'm like, hey mum, how's it going? She's like, well, it was raining today. And I thought, here come all the excuses. Now, the thing about excuses, anyone listening is, they're actually real. They feel very real in the moment. And so we allow the excuses to get in front of our goals and our dreams and our desires. Yes. So I thought, here we go with my mum's excuses. It's raining.
Valid.
And she turned around. I was like, okay. And she goes, yeah, valid to not get your steps in. She turns around to me and she goes, but because it was raining, I drove to the nearest biggest grocery store. I put on my Fitbit and I walked 5 miles up and down the aisles in the grocery store. And she was there for like 2 hours. Then she bought an apple and left.
Oh my gosh, your mom's a rock star. Wow.
At 65, she goes and does that. So she goes from the woman that believes she can't to believing she can, right? That's the first step, just believing she can, and then recognizing how her behavior reinforces that belief. So she changed the belief, then she had to change her behavior. So it's the same woman that gave the rain the excuse that never went and took 5 steps, now figured out that it was an excuse, came up with a solution because she was goal-oriented and believed she could.
Oh my goodness. It's about identity. It's about, well, I am a person now who walks, and so therefore I walk. The rain is just a part of the day, so what's my solution? Not like, oh, I wish I could, but no, this is now who I am, and if I am this, then I do this. It's an identity thing.
Yeah, I love that you said the identity thing, because that's really important, because I lent into that at Quest because I was a stay-at-home wife for 8 years. I hadn't built my skill sets. I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know. I mean, the person you see today, I was too embarrassed to get in front of the camera just so people can orient about how much I've grown my own confidence over the years.
Yeah.
And so starting off not having the confidence and not having the skill set, like it wasn't false, I literally had no skill sets to develop on. I had to have the idea of being the learner, because every time you show up and you fail, it can dent your ego. And so in order for me to keep learning, for me to get back up, for me to understand how I walk towards my goals, I had to adopt the idea of the learner. And the learner is what excuse comes in front of you and what you're going to do differently. Right? So like I put these things in place with the identity of learning. So anytime you fail, anytime you find something that you may not be good at, let's just go back to music again. Let's say that in order for you to achieve your goal, you have to learn the piano, but you're actually a guitar player. And so now let's say you're 60. And you're like, but I'm a guitar player. Well, do you close the door to being a pianist? Or do you say, I can learn anything. I just have to put in the time and effort to do it.
Yes.
Just like my mum, it is never too late. You just have to look at what your behaviors are, what your beliefs are, and then ask yourself, do they serve your goals? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then you've got to change.
That's right. And I think a lot of times people get stuck with that high level goal of like, I want to be a Grammy award winning artist, or I want to be on Broadway, or I want to lose 100 pounds. But then they lose sight, and they fantasize about that high level goal, but they lose sight of in regards to mid and low level goals and how to get there. They just focus on the 100 pounds or the Grammy, but they don't think about the road that gets them there. And I think that's where a lot of people stop.
Why.
Yeah, the why behind it all. Absolutely.
I want to win a Grammy. What happens once you've won it?
I don't think anybody thinks about that.
And here's the thing. This is why you end up sadly with so many successful people that end up committing suicide.
Yes.
So you are going for a
Exactly.
feeling that is transient.
Yes.
It is not permanent. This too shall pass.
Yes.
So whether it's happiness or whether it's misery, this too shall pass. So what happens if you want to get a Grammy because you think everyone's going to think you're amazing and you're purely doing it off the accolades you think you're going to get? Well, let me tell you, once you've won that Grammy, a year later, or Emmy or whatever you're trying to go for, a year later, people have forgotten.
That's right. Nobody cares.
You remember.
Yeah.
No one cares. So now that you're not getting those accolades that you got once you won it, how are you working 10, 15, 20 years to build up to one moment that will dissipate?
Yeah.
Your feelings will change and go over time. So when I talk about the why, it needs to be so that once you get there, you're still on the journey.
Yeah.
Now you just move the goalpost. You're like, oh my God, amazing. I've won a Grammy. This is fantastic. But I still want to make sure that I make blind people feel something through my music. Right? That's a why. That's a freaking strong why. Whereas like I want to be able to communicate through music with someone that is blind in order for them to be able to communicate with another blind person, whatever, right? That's a strong why. So you can imagine now that isn't attached to a one-time thing. It's not attached to I've lost 100 pounds, I've got the Grammy. It's attached to the feeling that I can keep going even though I've won the Grammy. What's the next thing? Well, shit, if you've won a Grammy, what's the next thing based on your why?
Yeah.
So again, if your why is to maybe help blind people, you can understand that now your Grammy is just a stepping stone into helping it. Because maybe now winning the Grammy means people take you seriously. And now you can use that as a mechanism to get on a stage in front of X, Y, and Z. But it isn't in and of itself. The goal isn't to just win the Grammy. Ugh. So your why, you have to know your why. You have to write that freaking why down, and you need to remind yourself over and over and over again. And so someone like my mum, who didn't just say, I want to lose X pounds, she said, I wanted to be healthy again, because I, in all honesty, guilted her a little into like, I don't want my mum to die young. You know, like, I want you to be around for another 30 years. And so her why now wasn't tied to I'm reaching 100 pounds and now I'm good, or because she lost 120 pounds in her late 60s and has kept it off.
Wow.
Because it's not tied to I want to fit into these jeans, I want to look a certain way. It is tied to emotion. I want to be there for my children. If I walk today, I now maybe have had another day to my life. If I don't walk today, I maybe have taken another day off of my lifespan. That is a strong why that now propels you forward.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love you so much. And everything that you say are things that I say to my students or people that watch my channel or any of my content on a daily basis. It's just the catalyst is music, but it really is your why. It's the mindset behind it that separates the people who are wannabe singers to then people who are meaningful artists, not just the fly-by-night, one-hit wonders, but the ones that are around, that become that icon of hope and inspiration to others. And man, I just love everything that you're saying. You're wearing something today that I'd like to talk about. You've got a Wonder Woman pendant on. Yes.
I do.
And here's another bizarre little through line. So every year for Halloween, I'm Wonder Woman.
Oh my God.
Every single year. I can even throw up a picture, but every single year I am Wonder Woman. And a lot of people nickname me that because I'm a pretty high performer. Like I run hot, I get up, I'm after it every day. And I see you in that. So, but you also wear a Chanel necklace usually, which is quite large. It's not on you today. But I think when people see you in this Wonder Woman necklace with this also Chanel pendant that's rather large, I can imagine that sometimes might evoke some opinions or some strong, like preconceived notions about you, but you actually talk about why you wear both in Radical Confidence in your book. And I'd love our audience to hear why. I think it's important.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm so bummed I'm not wearing it today. I was like, maybe I was too branded. I've got like a lot going on. So I didn't put it on. But yeah, look, I make a promise to myself and I keep them. And so when we were building Quest and my house was on the line and my husband's salary got cut in half and two of us in Los Angeles were living off $50,000, two people, I couldn't afford Starbucks. I was doing my coffee at home. I was reusing my filters, those little filters. I was like, oh, maybe I can get a couple more before it breaks. So like you make these tiny little decisions all along the way in the greater good for the future. Yeah. But the thing that I want to make sure that I don't get trapped in doing things for the greater good and never then serving myself like I did with my health, right? It was for 8 years, serve, and then my health went bad. So I now will sacrifice happily, but I'll make promises to myself. And so as I was struggling and as I was taking my own homemade coffee that had been done from filters, 3 times over. I was taking my coffee to Starbucks so that I could still hang out with my friends.
Wow.
So imagine your friends are all hanging out. I felt originally, I just kept saying no because I was like, I can't afford it. And then I realized that because I couldn't afford the coffee, I was missing out on bonding with my friends. And so in that moment, I had the choice of like, Lisa, you can not go. Or you can just say, I know why I'm showing up. I know why I'm not buying the coffee, but I still want to be part of the group. And so what's another option? Oh, Lisa, just take your coffee with you. So I would take my coffee with me to Starbucks to hang out with my friends. So in those moments that I'm doing things like that, I make myself a promise that I'm going to give myself a reward when in quotes, because of course you never know if the when's actually going to come. But I just made myself those promises. And the truth is that this cheapy little Wonder Woman necklace that I bought off Amazon that cost me like $20 was the thing that I put on in order for me to help build my confidence. That was the thing that Wonder Woman stands as, a badass confidence person. So I would put it on, I would look in the mirror, and I would repeat to myself over and over, because I'm trying to build my confidence: you're a badass like Wonder Woman. You're a badass like Wonder Woman. And so I done my research. I know humans that, we are mirror neurons. So what we see is what we
That's
mimic.
right.
So if I look at myself in the mirror and I put on my own Wonder Woman necklace and I tell myself, because words are powerful
Yes.
as well, because it's a reinforcement. So I would repeat it. I would look at myself in the mirror, and I would do that for at least 30 days, because I know habits take at least 30 days. So I felt like an idiot,
Right.
but I was like, well, Lisa, you know about biology, you know about humans,
Yeah.
you know about habits. Just give it a
Right.
shot. And so I did it for 30 days, and it became my empowerment piece.
Wow.
But then on top of that, I did hit amazing financial goals that I had set when we were struggling, and I was taking my own coffee to Starbucks with me. And that was that if I see something that I like and I can afford it, I'm going to buy it. And I don't care what other people say. And I stick to my word. And even today, I will wear the most outlandish jewelry, right? Like my watch is like
bigger than your hand. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it is literally bigger. But like, I've got it paired with a Wonder Woman ring.
I love.
And these are just all little reminders that I do to myself with my Wonder Woman ring, that I can look and I can see that she's there guiding me. And that my big I'm not sure how much I can swear on this podcast, but my big watch is there to say that once upon a time, I never was able to afford it. But because I was able to look at myself in the mirror, address my inadequacies, get back up time and time again, every time I failed, put my ego on the freaking sideline, even though my ego wants to take center stage, I wouldn't let it. And you better believe I don't feel guilty or bad in the slightest for rewarding myself, a promise I made, because I did the hard work.
I love that. And I really think that it's so important to hear that story, because a lot of people who may not be able to afford that yet could look at that and in an envious spirit be like, oh, she's like flaunting her wealth. It's so distasteful. And that's why it's so important not to judge, because you are one of the most transparent, authentic, real, humble people. You have no problem saying you brought your own coffee 3 times old filtered to Starbucks. And good for you for being able to do that now. And it's not for anybody, it's for you. And I just love that. And I think it's very important, because we live in an age where, people think they have permission just because you are a public figure, or I'm wearing something and I have 1 million+ subscribers to say stuff like you. And it's like, you're hiding behind a computer screen. You must be really unhappy with yourself. And also, why would you put that bad energy out there? You don't know what I've struggled with. You don't know where I've come from. And here you are, saying, yeah, I don't care. This is mine. Like, I worked for this. And I really love your pendant. I just wanted to.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you wear it proudly. And it really is so heartwarming for me to hear that story and to see. And I remember meeting you with it. And I'm like, that's a badass pendant. But to know the story behind it, I think is so inspiring. And I think there's this sort of unspoken requirement of false humility with someone who's really successful. Like, if you don't self-deprecate, if you're not overly humble, then you're a braggart and you're super puffed up and you're arrogant. But false humility is just that. You're not humble at all. So be real about what you have, and also be real about how you got it and the struggles along the way for other people to be inspired. And that's why I love your book and you so much. So Lisa, I have one more thing to ask of you today. I do this with everybody, and it's a rapid fire question and answer. No rehearsal. Are you ready?
I love these. And if you can get me to say only 3 words, I'll be impressed. People are just like, Lisa, it's rapid fire. And I'm like, no, Lisa doesn't do rapid, but you can fire it.
But you can fire it. I'll never
Let's
fire
try
it.
All right, let's do it.
Favorite TV show?
Friends.
Good. Favorite season of the year?
Oh, wow. Oh, ooh, Christmas.
That's not a season. That's a holiday.
It's a season to me.
You and my mother.
Me and my husband, starting on Thanksgiving morning, we dress in Christmas matching onesies, and we do it from Thanksgiving all the way until New Year. So it feels like a season at the Bilyeu house.
You do it every day?
From Thanksgiving, yeah, to New Year. I always put out our onesies, and so we wear matching onesies, except unless we're working. So then in the evenings, we'll just change into them.
That is the most epic couples thing I think I've ever heard in my life. That's amazing. I love it. If you could have coffee with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Okay, I'm going to choose alive just because I think that when I set goals, I've set goals for the people that I want on the show. So I've thought about this a lot. So at the top of my list is Jodie Foster.
Interesting. What would you ask?
Yeah, no one sees that one coming.
No, I don't.
I would just talk about being a woman in film. So I actually wrote my dissertation, which I think you guys call thesis over here. I wrote my end of college thesis on her and women in film. And she was the woman that made me believe that a woman in Hollywood was possible, no matter where you wanted to be. So if you wanted to produce, direct, you could do it. She really set the stage. And so having just spent like 4 months diving into her world and writing about her, now this was a long time ago, this was like 20 years ago, but she's always had a very special place in my heart of what it means to be a beautiful woman inside and out, have courage, have confidence, show up with integrity. I could keep going on.
Wow. Have you asked her on your podcast?
No, not yet. So going to goals, I have almost like a path, right, to how to get there. So I'm waiting. She just came out with that movie, which I sadly missed the boat there. It's really about planning now. So she's got that movie came out and then her TV show came out. So just knowing what people are like, that they're not going to promote or come on a show unless they have something to promote. Right. And then once they have something to promote, you've got to get a contact that someone can actually give vouch for you. So it's about finding that right person to vouch for you that can get to Jodie, because if you just go through her agents in, the real world of how to book guests, if you just go through your agent, there's so much bureaucracy you've got to get through and red tape. Right. So in a way, I will one day, but I did just have so I had like my all-time favorite, who was Jada Pinkett Smith. And she just came on my show
Amazing.
Like 3 weeks ago. Congrats. So that was a call my shot, keep working. And one of my favorite quotes is, be so good they can't ignore you.
Yes.
So
Steve Martin?
I knew I'd built my Steve Martin. There it is, me. Exactly.
Yes.
My favorite quote.
Love that quote.
And so it got to the point where Jada was promoting her book. I had already set the foundations for people to recommend and say, hey, she, is a great host and she'll do a good interview for you. And so by the time I came to it, she said yes. So when she came, it was literally a dream come true.
Amazing.
I made a video, in fact, 3 years ago that I was going to post to try and get Jada on. And I never ended up posting it.
Wow.
And I still have that video now. And so I shared it with the team here because some people didn't know. So I'm like, just to show you how long ago I called my shot.
Wow.
It was 3 years ago, and look at this video. So anyone listening, and I know this is supposed to be rapid fire, but anyone listening, it's like, you've just got to be consistent. Yep. You've got to call your shot. You've got to have a goal in mind. You've got to be crystal clear on what that goal is. And then you need to put a plan in place on how you're going to get there, because it won't happen by accident. That's right. And what people then will turn around and say is luck is purely preparation meets opportunity.
Oh, every day. So good. Oh my gosh, I love you. Say it in the back. Say it twice. Say it loud. So good. Okay. All right. Back to the rapid fire, because we could pontificate all day long. Yeah. All right. What is... And this may be a loaded question with your gut issues, but what's your favorite food?
Okay, not caring about my gut, it would be, in all truth, like what's my final dish on the planet if I was going to be electrocuted is kind of like the question I always ask myself. It's my dad's, like they say, your last meal. Yeah. So it would be my dad's barbecue. It's just like, my dad is very traditional Greek. Ooh. And he does like big chunks of lamb on the barbecue, and it's on the spit and it's cooking for hours. And like that mixed with my stepmom's roasted potatoes and Ooh. And then I would finish it off with Cold Stone. But you want to talk about something that would put me out of commission for 3 weeks, it would be me eating Cold Stone.
Absolutely. Totally get that. Completely get that. Okay. What are you really curious about?
How I'm going to live till over 100.
Nice. When you figure that out, you call me up, okay?
Thank you. I'm working on it, honey.
I love it.
Again, you don't think I take this stuff for a chance, do you? I'm 44, so I figured, okay, if I put in the right foundation right now, I can live till over 100. I'm about to interview a woman who's 103, and so I know it's doable. So the only question is how.
Absolutely.
And so I am curious, and I keep asking the question. So I wear Oura Ring, continuous glucose monitor, all the things, so I can understand my body, so that I can then come up with a game plan of how I'm going to get there.
Super cool. Well, if anyone can do it, I believe you can. Absolutely. What's your guilty pleasure?
Smoking marijuana.
Again, very real, very honest. Okay.
let me just double down on that one. Smoking marijuana while watching The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
That is definitely a guilty pleasure. Wow. I love this question. Very interested to know your answer. Is it better to ask for permission or beg for forgiveness?
It all depends. It all depends. I would so want to give you a fun, cocky answer, but it all depends. There are going to be certain circumstances. So the thing that I think about and how we talk about things in the company is, are you about to dent the car or are you about to total the car?
Okay.
So you can dent the car over and over and over, but if you're about to do something that totals the car, don't do it.
Interesting. Okay. What book are you currently reading?
Well, I read so many books for my show. So typically it's the book that I'm about to have a guest on. And in fact, I'm about to have Dr. Amen on, and he's a brain doctor.
Very
and
cool.
he wrote a book called The Power of a Woman's Brain. I don't actually have the title in front of me, but yeah. And again, going to how do I live till over I'm 100? So I very much deliberately do things that help give me the knowledge that I need. So I'm interviewing him about the brain. So what do I need to do to keep my brain optimized? Because I don't want to live to 100 and have Alzheimer's.
Right.
I want to live to 100 and still be able to be cognitively there. What I love about it is it not only allows me to understand my own brain, but it actually allows me to understand the difference between me and my husband's brains. And of course, I'm talking about a traditional heterosexual relationship here, but because our brains are different and they are structured differently. And so once I understand him, I no longer judge him, if I'm going to be honest. And the one thing that I joke about that is very real is, have you ever had where you've asked a guy to go look for something and they're like, I can't find it. And you walk in and it's like right in front of them. And if it was a snake, they'd be bitten.
And I wish they were bitten.
Yeah. So the amount of comedy that all of us women say about guys with that. Now, what's funny is it's actually part of the brain, and the brain is actually structured differently, that women actually are more susceptible to nuances and details than men. Because when, as a mother, back in the caveman days, if you think about bringing up a child where you didn't have a thermometer and things like that, a woman had to be able to detect whether their child was sick or not, which is why a lot of women have a fourth color receptor and men don't. So that you actually notice the difference in the skin tone of your baby. It's fascinating. So, but think about it, the guys typically back in the caveman days would go and hunt. So their attention to that tiny detail they didn't need. They needed aggression. They needed strength, exactly, like agility. So their entire brains are structured to give them what they need. So now, every time my husband goes to find something, I'm like, it's all right, babe, it's not you, it's your brain. And I now actually understand him. Now, of course, that's just a silly small thing, but now take that to the scale of everything, of discussions about hot topics, when you're talking to your partner about anything. If you can understand how they think and where they come from, imagine the type of communication that you'll have, because now you're not like judging each other, you're just accepting each other. And so
amazing.
Long way of saying that's the book that I'm reading. I find it fascinating, and anyone that's interested in the brain, they should pick that.
Very cool. I love it. Okay, this is fun. If you had to be a Disney character, who would it be?
Who would I be? That's a really good question.
It's tough. People have a really hard time with this one.
I want to be bloody Prince Charming. I want to be the one that's riding on the horse and has the freedom to do whatever I freaking like.
I kid you not. I honestly had a quick fleeting moment where I thought you were going to say that, Lisa. And then you did not disappoint. I really did.
I didn't even know I was going to say it.
I just saw you on a horse real quick. And then you said that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's hilarious.
Oh my God. I didn't expect myself to even say that answer, but that was the first thing that came to mind.
I'm dead. That's so funny. If I broke into your phone right now, like I took it from your hands, what would be your most highly Googled topic?
Highly Googled topic? I don't really Google things now, to be honest. Yeah, to be honest, I go on YouTube a lot because that's just where my world is from. I'm trying to give you like a real answer. Do you want me to just grab my phone and show you what the last thing I Googled?
Yes, I do.
Eric?
Yes, I do.
Can you pass? A lot of it is probably a lot of things that thank you. A lot of things that I Google medical stuff or food related.
Okay. Oh, and she has a Wonder Woman phone holder on the back too. You are on your phone.
Oh yeah. All right. So here you go. So my last searches were potato, meaning Cosmopolitan Las Vegas, because I'm treating my mum to a vacation in Vegas. So I was looking up Cosmo. Avra, which is a Greek restaurant around the corner. Jeff Bezos. I don't know why I was searching for Snoop Dogg movie. Wow. 2024. So these are my hyperbaric chambers.
Oh, cool.
Where does Ben Shapiro live? Blaze of Glory song lyrics. So there you go.
Wow.
How do you even bucket? I don't even know what my mind's going through when I'm.
That is a very eclectic Google search. I approve. That's very funny. Okay. Last question, Lisa. You've killed the lightning round. So many good answers. All right. You're dropped into a city. Besides your phone, what do you have to have?
Does my husband count?
Sure.
My husband. I could be on a deserted island. If you've ever seen that show Alone, where they literally drop you in the wilderness with 10 items. And you've got to live in the wilderness for as long as humanly possible. You've got to hunt your own, all of that. And you are literally by yourself. And they carry cameras and they film themselves. It is a fascinating show just to understand humanity and understand kind of what
psychology,
how many luxuries we have. But yeah, so me and my husband, we watched that show and just what would be the hardest thing to overcome. And really, I think it would be loneliness and for me to be without him, because anything else, if I had to hunt while I wouldn't like it and it would really wreck me emotionally, I could do it.
Okay.
But the loneliness, being without him for 7 months or however long, I was to be alone, that would be detrimental to my own actual health, because loneliness actually, in fact, I just interviewed somebody. Loneliness is an equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Really?
15. Loneliness, the way it impacts our health. So I just heard this from a doctor, so I know it's true. So the way it impacts our health, loneliness, is as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Unbelievable. Wow. Fascinating. I don't blame you. That's a very sweet answer. And I'm sure your husband is blushing if he's watching this. So guys, I know that listening to this did not disappoint. Lisa, you are a force. You are a ball of energy. But most importantly, you're so real. You are so empowering to anybody who is in earshot of your voice. Thank you for writing this book. And I hope that for those of you who are my fans and my audience who are listening to this, if you feel at all marginalized, unempowered, stuck, maybe you're in a purgatory of the mundane where life is just good enough and you're living for the weekend, read Lisa's book, grab it in the description box below, and go for it. We're living one life, guys, and Lisa's here to tell you, I'm here to tell you that you matter, that your voice matters. We want you to live your very best, very biggest, very most empowered life. And this podcast was all about that. So I hope that if you don't, that you follow and subscribe to Lisa Bilyeu's channel, Women of Impact and Impact Theory. Her husband, Tom Bilyeu, is also a big YouTuber. They do amazing things, and I love how they give back in such great and powerful ways. So Lisa, thank you for being on today. I love you. I consider you a friend now, and I appreciate you being so generous with your time and your knowledge.
Oh, my homie, thank you so much. Thank you for showing up and doing such a great job. And I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you, and it's great to see you since VidSummit.
Yes, you too. Make sure that you check out Lisa's Radical Confidence book in the description box below, and we'll see you on the next one, guys. Bye.